The village in it with a map and a plan. No place too tiny for this determined man. Crossing the counties one by one, you'll see in every English corner a bit of history.
Hello folks, welcome back to Peterborough once again. Now today I can shout as loud as I like about where I am because absolutely nobody is going to hear me. You can see all around me there is beautiful open fenland countryside. There's not a village in this one, in fact there's very little in the way of population, but there are a few secrets within all this farmland. This is the glorious Borough Fen. Borough Fen, Fort Marshland. Today in Peterborough we've got the other part of the Fen which we were in yesterday. Whilst the village of Newborough might be the population centre around here, I reckon it's Borough Fen that has the way more interesting things to talk about, despite the fact that it's smaller and it appears from the map to just be a vast swathe of farmland. Well, let me tell you folks, even arable farmland can hold some secrets, and Borough Fen fits that bill. You can perhaps best define Borough Fen as a series of fields separated by 4 or maybe 5 long straight lanes, if you include the A16 in the east of the area. There's no discernible population nucleus. The residents of the Fen are scattered across the area, living in isolated farmhouses or similar, which are dotted across the lanes. In total, there are just 54 dwellings here. Ever since the Fens were drained by Cornelius Vermuyden, Borough Fen has predominantly been used for agriculture and cattle farming, which is still a significant employment sector today. Farming is, without a doubt, the biggest employer in this part of the Fen, a marked difference from the occupational change that's seen Newborough move away from it in recent times. Much of the land in the 19th century was owned by Sir Culling Eardley, who was a strong supporter of the local boys' school. Borough Fen has 2 notable historical features. One of them is a duck decoy, supposedly one of the oldest in England. The other is a World War II pillbox, built as a component of the British anti-invasion preparations. There's no walking route here, it's virtually impossible, so get ready for a lot of driving instead. We begin this episode at the end of one of the lanes that cross Borough Fen, radiating north from the B1443. This one's called Decoy Bank or Decoy Road, and there's a reason for that. This road marks the western parish boundary, and where it comes to an end, it turns sharply towards a farm just south of the River Welland. The farm, in and of itself, is nothing greatly special. After all, farms are 10 a penny on the Fens, and they all look fairly similar. However, this one's got a piece of local history to tell us. It's called Decoy Farm because it sits in front of what's perhaps Borough Fen's best known historical feature, a duck decoy. Now we can't see it ourselves because it's on private land. According to my sources though, the farmers will show you it if you ask, but I'm too socially awkward to do that. We've met duck decoys before. Most notably, the one you may all remember well is the big one at Ashby Parkland in Scunthorpe. Borough Fen's decoy, though, is supposedly the oldest of its kind in England. It was in operation intermittently between 1776 and 1959, catching primarily mallard. Borough Fen was historically a wildfowl haven, with the area being permanently underwater during Saxon and medieval times. The decoy has a history stretching back to at least the 17th century, with the earliest reference to it coming from 1670, not long after Cornelius Vermuyden drained the Fens. It was used by the Williams family, who were acting for the Earl of Lincoln. They were granted permission to take water using a ditch from the River Welland to create its central pond. The decoy operated with a system of covered ditches or pipes leading from that central pond, and wildfowl were lured into a netted area at the far end. It was owned and operated by generations of the Williams family until 1958. In the years since then, the decoy's function has changed somewhat. No longer used for trapping ducks, Borough Fen Decoy has also been operated as a trussed ringing station. So even though we can't actually get to the decoy on foot, we can see it from here, because it's that massive clump of trees you can see on the horizon. That is the duck decoy. And like I said, you can, if you ask at the farm, get a private tour of it, but I'm way too awkward to do that. So yeah, instead we'll just drive back down this road, because the next thing we definitely can see. Decoy Bank has another thing which we simply cannot pass without mentioning. This time though, we can actually see the thing we're talking about. Both Borough Fen and Newborough's names are references to a fortification. Newborough literally means new fort, and Borough Fen means Fort Marshland. So where's the fort? Well, the answer is just off Decoy Bank, where you can see several earthworks in a field. To archaeologists, it's known as Borough Fen Iron Age Fort. This is sometimes described as a hill fort, which is a little perverse since it's within a landscape that's absolutely bang flat and barely above sea level. Logically though, it's not wrong to term it that. The fort has parallels with the characteristics of other similar forts found on hilltops across Britain. Constructed in the Middle Iron Age, only the enclosure banks of the ring fort are visible today. They define a roughly circular area of 3.8 hectares with a diameter of 220 metres. The interior is entirely buried beneath clay, and all its floors are still intact. The bank and ditch that surround it too are intact, and the defensive ditch is waterlogged. The site is actually bisected by Decoy Road, although the piece to the west is the bit that's seen better. To the east it's been damaged somewhat by modern ploughing. A survey of the fort conducted in 1987 revealed it was sealed by alluvial deposits, probably dating from the Roman times. That confirms almost that the Romans never used it, even though they were pretty handy at reusing Iron Age stuff for their own gains. In 1993, limited excavation was carried out along the sides of the nearby Red Cow drain, and sections through both ramparts were exposed, showing possible timber revetting. Organic material and Middle Iron Age pottery dating from between the 2nd and 3rd century BC were recovered from the waterlogged main ditch. In addition, a complete horse's skull was recovered from the bottom of the outer enclosure ditch. It had been placed in such a way as to suggest some sort of ritual offering. So what was the purpose of Borough Fen's fort then? What was it protecting if, as we already know, the Fen was a massive swamp at the time? Well, like all Iron Age forts, its purpose probably varied. A similar fort at Stoneer Camp near March, not far away from here, was more of a meeting place for trade or a refuge for times of conflict. Both it and Borough Fen, along with countless others, likely would have been significant to regional tribes such as the Coriol Torvi, the Iceni, and the Catavalorni. I guess in a way you could say they were like small towns rather than forts. Mind you, the position of Borough Fen's fort would have made it hard for anyone to invade via water. Genuinely couldn't have timed this visit to Borough Fen better, because, as you may have noticed, I'm actually walking on the Iron Age fort. I was given permission by a farmer who was actually in this field when I arrived, and he said you are allowed to walk on this, so even though it's not publicly allowed, he's given me permission to. Now, he said apparently this dike that you can see here, which formed the boundary of the fort, still catches water. It's 4,000 years old, and still to this day it catches water in it. Absolutely amazing. Fantastic to see this firsthand. We don't normally get this close to earthworks of this kind, do we? Now up here there's a couple of mounds which you can just about see. They're not very well pronounced, but they are there. And then the fort went all along here. This field is where it was, and there was even a piece on the other side of Decoy Road, Decoy Bank. It went all around there. Massive thing. It's no wonder that Borough Fen is called Borough Fen, because obviously it takes its name from this thing. Now we're going for a lengthy drive. Decoy Bank is one of 4 lanes or droves that run north from the B1443, splitting these arable fields up into almost rectangular sections. If you wanted to be a little pedantic, you could argue there are 5 lanes because one of them in the eastern reaches of the Fen is the A16. The rest are just like Decoy Bank, bumpy, narrow tracks that are designed and maintained primarily for farm vehicles these days. Very few people live on these droves. Those that do may be employed in agriculture, but the number that are is far less than you might think. In 1881, the majority of the residents in Borough Fen, some 87.5% no less, were employed in the agricultural sector. This was normal for rural areas of England in the late 19th century. The population increased substantially between 1921 and 1931, both in Borough Fen and in nearby Newborough. The key driver for the increase was actually nothing to do with farming. Instead, it was all to do with the London Brick Company, based in Peterborough. By 1935, they were dominating the local economy of the city and employed a lot of people in the surrounding areas. Throughout the rest of the 20th century, with farming becoming more and more mechanised, Borough Fen saw a drop in the number employed in the agricultural sector. At the 2011 census, the number only stood at 16.2% of all employed residents. The shift can be explained by the rise of the retail and mechanical sectors, which hold 21.2% of local employment. All that considered, Borough Fen is still very much a farming community. Whilst not everyone out here is employed by it, you can't escape the fact that it's all around you. Since the advent of modern drainage, arable farming has largely replaced pastoral farming in areas like Borough Fen. The Fens in general are known for their intensive crop production, especially grains, vegetables and cash crops. Wheat, barley, sugar beet, peas and rapeseed are grown on a large scale. Although it's not all Grade 1 farmland, the Fens benefit from having a high water table, which can be challenging for certain crops, but also beneficial for others. Joined as they are to over 60 miles of coastal sea walls and 96 miles of fluvial embankments, the Fens are well protected, despite the fact they still have a vulnerability to flooding. In all, 88% of the land in the Fens is cultivated, and the fertile soils account for about half of the most productive farmland in England. Farming contributes significantly to the success of the local economy, supporting a large number of businesses involved in the production of food and, believe it or not, rural tourism too. The vital role played by farming in the Fens is underlined by the fact that since 1995, the self-sufficiency of the UK has declined steadily. UK farmers now only produce 71% of the food that we eat that can be grown in our climate, but by the same token, what we grow has never been more important. Of late, there's been a series of poor global harvests that have left many countries facing food shortages, so food security is once again on the political agenda. Set against the steady decline in self-sufficiency across the country, the highly productive land out here is a precious resource that must be protected at all costs now. Whilst this is all fields for pretty much as far as the eye can see, the Fens harbour a few secrets hidden in plain sight. We've already seen the duck decoy and the fort, for example. However, here in Borough Fen, there's another. If you head up Speechley Drove, you'll find a structure that harks back to the Fens' importance during the war. You know what they say about all the best laid plans, even they have flaws in them? Well, there's meant to be a pillbox here. Well, there is a pillbox, but it's buried. Someone's come along and chucked a load of muck on top of this World War II pillbox here, and I can't actually see it. I was planning on finishing here because I was going to tell you a bit about why pillboxes can be found on farmland, because as you can see, there is said pillbox and here is said farmland. It's on the edge of it. There's a very interesting reason why they exist on farmland, but unfortunately I can't tell you why by using that pillbox as an example. However, I do have a little bit of a backup plan, because as I was driving up Speechley Drove to get to that, I spotted another one. So let's go and find that one instead. During World War II, some 34 pillboxes were erected in various places across Cambridgeshire. There were 2 of them here, at least, at Borough Fen. Dating from the 1940s, this was built as part of the British anti-invasion preparations. Now, generally, we see these things on beaches or perhaps close to old airfields, but there's neither of those things here. They were surprisingly common on farmland too. It makes sense when you think about it, because their main role was to provide a defensive position for soldiers. Where else would soldiers be able to hide on this flat, wide open countryside? Yep, absolutely nowhere. Concrete pillboxes such as this one were developed as a direct response to the increasing power of machine guns. They were often camouflaged and equipped with loopholes for firing. Now, there is an urban, or if you will, rural, myth that in some cases after the war, farmers were asked to remove pillboxes from their land. There is a grain of truth in that, but many remain today. A common story would suggest that farmers were paid a sum of money, often stated as £5, to remove them, but it's somewhat disputed. Whilst compensation was sometimes given for the removal of defensive structures, this may have been in addition to local schemes where farmers were tasked with the work. Yeah, so not the pillbox I planned, but it still does the same job. That one you can find on the B1443 as it makes its way across Borough Great Fen towards a place called Thorney. Now from here I can see the A16 in my line of sight. It's on the horizon. We're going to cross that now on the roundabout where those 2 roads meet, and then our last job is to go to a pet shop which is just beyond that, and that's really Borough Fen. There's nothing much more to it, but isn't it fantastic? Our final stop in Borough Fen takes us to a place on the last drove that runs north from the B1443 before the parish comes to an end. This is Peterborough Road. On here we have Cave's Pet Shop, which is actually a satellite branch of a company that we may well meet in another village around here soon, Crowland. Established for well over a decade, they supply a wide range of pet food and pet accessories in both their Crowland store and here on Borough Fen. So that's Borough Fen, everybody, and given there are no other public roads here, I've pretty much taken you around the whole thing. Most people who cross the Fens using the B1443 will just drive through here without giving this farmland a second thought, but Borough Fen is an exceptional area. That's it for Peterborough parishes for now. We've done 4, but there are still 25 to go to. I'll be back very soon, so watch this space. just before I go, remember, this video is part of a huge project to visit every civil parish in England. That's more than 10,000. These routes are pre-planned, and due to time constraints, I can't cover every detail or walk down every street. Please don't complain if this video missed something out. I pronounce names how I choose to. I am very aware that local dialect may vary, and I don't take kindly to criticism about this. You've been warned. It's impossible to know everything too. If this video was terrible, make your own. If you're a regular watcher of The Village Idiot, you're not the only one. If you've got a small business, why not use my videos to advertise it? Leave a comment below if you're interested. And finally, thanks for watching this episode, everybody. Give us a like and a subscribe if you've enjoyed this episode, and share it with your friends and relatives. It all helps to keep this mission going. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as The Village Idiot, and I'm out.